All right, so we've got our walls framed, top plates on. Next step is the rafters. So to calculate your rafter line length, you're going to need a square corner somewhere, like a sheet of plywood or graph paper, anything like that. You can pick whatever you want to be the pitch of your roof. I'm going to pick 9 on 12. I wouldn't make it too steep because our rafters probably aren't long enough to do anything like a 12 on 12. Too shallow, like 4 on 12. It might be difficult to cut the bird's mouth cut. So first thing I'm going to do on my square corner is I'm going to mark 9 and 12. And you can do this with a ruler or, like I said, with graph paper or anything like that. First thing you need is the pitch, which we've got, which is 9 on 12. And we also need the run of our rafter. So on our little building, our ridge is in the center of our building. It's not offset like a cape or anything. The run of your rafter is half the width of the building. Our building is 20 inches across, so half that width is 10. So we need to find a run of 10 inches. So from this line to here, wherever that crosses the plane of our rafter, that is 10 inches right there. So I'm nice and square, 10 inches right there. So this line right here represents the outside of our building. And this right here where it crosses is the center of our ridge. So this length right here from the peak of our ridge right to the outside of our building is along the top of the rafter. So it's along there. So what we need to find is our bird's mouth next. We want our bird's mouth to be fully seated on the top plate. So this is our top plate right there. We want that bird's mouth to fully seat on the top plate. We wouldn't want it to be here. We wouldn't want it to be way back here like that. So the easiest way to figure out where our bird's mouth is probably hold your rafter piece right on top of our 9 on 12 line. Draw that top and bottom chord. So we've got the line for the top chord, draw the bottom chord like that. So now this is our rafter right here, top chord, bottom chord of our rafter. Next, for our bird's mouth, take a small scrap of wall framing, hold it flush on that line that represents the outside of the building, slide it up until it just touches the bottom chord with this leading edge right here, and draw those two lines. And that's our bird's mouth. So overhang usually is shown on a set of plans, and that's basically the horizontal distance from the outside of our building to the end of our rafter tail. Sometimes there'll be subfascia nailed on the outside of the rafter tail, but basically just pick a dimension. So I'm going to pick an overhang of 1 inch right there. So that's 1 inch from the outside of our building. And then you can make your rafter tail look like anything you want. You can have a short bit of plumb cut and then a level cut, or just have the whole thing be a plumb cut, whatever you like. Last thing we have to do is we have to subtract for half the thickness of the ridge, just a single 2x. So we can hold that right centered on that line right there and draw that right there. So this from here to here is our rafter. So now we have our rafter template. Next step would be to mark and cut out 2 rafters and then hold them up on our building and make sure that they fit. So if you cut this out of graph paper, you could cut that out, use that as a pattern for marking all these. Okay, so I got my rafters cut. Next I need to just check the fit, see how they fit. So I'm going to do that right on my house here. This is just mimicking the thickness of the ridge beam right here in the center. And you want your rafters to sit flat on the top plate and come together, and you shouldn't have any big gaps anywhere, either at the peak of the roof or your bird's mouth. These look pretty good. The one thing I'm getting a conflict here, where the plumb cut on my bird's mouth is hitting the plywood. So I'm going to have to adjust that a little bit. Basically, I have to take my plumb cut back, the thickness of the plywood on this side. So we're going to have two different rafters, because this side's going to bear on this side with no sheathing, and it's going to sit tight like that. This side, we're going to have to accommodate for the sheathing right there, because there's a little conflict there. But so you're going to have two patterns, but if they fit good and everything looks nice, go ahead and cut all your rafters. A couple tips for when you're cutting these: hold them really steady. Don't push too hard on your saw. Have a nice smooth stroke. Just let kind of the teeth of the saw do the work. And when you're cutting, make sure you're cutting close to your support right here, and try and visualize that saw going straight up and down through your piece. If you're cutting like this or like this on a bit of an angle, it's going to throw off your plumb cut, and then things won't line up so good. In the field, there's the three methods for calculating rafter line length. One is stepping it off with your framing square. Obviously, we can't do that because you can't get enough steps on a framing square with these little tiny rafters. The other, again, is using your rafter table on the body of the framing square. But we can't do that either because these are too small. The last way is using Pythagorean theorem, and we could do that, and I'll walk you through how to do that on the next video. But this will get you started cutting a couple rafters and test fitting them and stuff like that, and see how they go. You should have a couple extra rafters in your package. The shorter ones are your rafters. The longer ones are your ceiling joists. So I would say before you do any layout, just cut a couple rafters, test fit them. Let me know how it goes. If it's not going so well as far as marking and cutting, I'll figure something out, and we'll come up with an easier method of reproducing all these cuts.